Yeah, hi, this is Andy Baker of Kingwood Strength and Conditioning. And I was going to write an article on this, but I just didn't feel like writing, so I figured I'd just turn on the webcam and kind of give it to you straight. There was a video on StartingStrength.com yesterday that was released from the Starting Strength Coaches Association back in October of 2013. And it was a roundtable discussion between Jim Wendler, Mark Rippetoe, Matt Reynolds, and Dr. Jonathan Sullivan. And somebody had asked a question about the value or the panel's opinion on dynamic effort training. And there was, I guess, a little bit of confusion on the subject. And a lot of people had posted some questions. So I was going to go ahead and just maybe offer a little bit of clarification for anybody that's kind of wondering kind of what the deal is. Now, let me start off by saying a couple of things. One, I am not Louis Simmons, and I am not the authority on dynamic effort training, but I do use it myself, and I do use it with some of my clients, both here at the gym and some of the online consulting that I do. So I do have some relevant working experience with the method. The other thing I want to say is that I am not at all attempting to speak for anyone else. I'm certainly not trying to speak for Jim or Mark or Matt or anyone else. This is strictly my opinion, and if you know, anybody wants to call BS on it, that's fine. So I don't get too worked up over it. So anyway, one of the first things that caused a little bit of confusion was kind of this, what is the difference, you know, kind of getting our terminology right and kind of differentiating between what is dynamic training and dynamic effort training. Now, a lot of people, this may be, you know, kind of old territory for them, but dynamic training in this sense, basically, in the general sense, just basically means fast. Okay, so anything that we're going to do fast could qualify as dynamic training. So power cleans, power snatches, box jumps, squat jumps, sprints, you know, medicine ball, explosive medicine ball work, anything that moves a little bit of weight quickly, we're going to consider dynamic training. Now, specifically, what was referenced in the video on StartingStrength.com was dynamic effort training, which is a specific methodology of training the classical barbell lifts fast. So for anybody, which is most of you probably watching this that are familiar with West Side barbell training, that's kind of where it was popularized, which is, you know, you take the squat, and instead of kind of training it in the traditional rep range of, you know, 1 to 5 or 3 sets of 10 or something like that, you're going to train it for 10 sets of 2, moving each repetition as explosively as possible, and taking a limited amount of rest between sets, and working with a kind of a light to moderate weight. So if you were confused by the video, that's kind of the difference, you know, to get straight between what is dynamic effort training specifically and what is dynamic training more in the general sense. Now, what is my opinion on it? I'm gonna speak more directly towards dynamic effort training, or the West Side method of dynamic effort training, as I understand it. And my opinion is that it does not make you more explosive. I've worked with enough athletes at various levels of training advancement to really kind of be settled into the belief that you are either explosive and quick and fast, or you're not. Now, you can influence that, of course, by getting stronger and doing a limited amount of training, but you cannot take somebody who is genetically just not explosive and not fast and make them into an explosive lifter, in my opinion. Okay? So, why would we use dynamic effort training then? Why would we try to train explosively if it's not going to make us explosive? And my thought on that is that the dynamic effort method of training works really well as a way to accumulate volume in a less stressful manner than something like 5 sets of 5, which again, a lot of you that are watching this are going to be familiar with, that training methodology of taking a given weight, say 405 pounds, and doing it for 5 sets of 5 across. That's really, really stressful way to train. It's a very, very effective way to train, but it's very, very stressful to do something like that excuse me, on a year-round basis. So what is a way that a lifter can accumulate training volume without just completely beating himself into the ground and reaching a state of overtraining? And I think that the way that Westside does their 3-week wave of oscillating different training percentages over a 3-week wave and holding the volume around 10 to 12 sets of 2 explosive doubles is actually a really, really effective way to accumulate training volume in a way that doesn't beat the lifter up too bad. Now, this works especially well when you're training the squat. Let's take, for instance, the squat. Let's just talk about the squat. When you're training the squat multiple times per week, okay, and let's say 1 week you're going to do a volume workout, and the next you want to do a lower volume, higher intensity workout. Especially for kind of a late stage intermediate or advanced lifter, a lot of times they can dig themselves into a hole if they're trying to do too much at each one of those sessions. So let's say doing 5 sets of 5, and then trying to come back 3 to 4 days later and working up to a heavy 5 RM. He might be able to sustain that for a few weeks, maybe even a few months. But as far as doing a year-round program like that, it's going to be really hard to sustain that without digging yourself into a recovery hole. So the dynamic effort sets are a good idea to kind of rotate into those volume days part of the year, or use it year-round. I found that it's something that can be used kind of year-round and work really well, especially if you have another day of the week where you're training heavier with a little bit higher intensity. If you're a guy that has your squat program set up where you only maybe squat once a week, I probably don't think dynamic effort training is that effective way to train. I think you'll do better training a little heavier and a little bit higher intensity. So sets of singles on up to 5s probably work better for that. Now, the other thing I think where people get confused on dynamic effort training, and part of this is, if you read a lot of what Louis Simmons has written, if you read a lot of the stuff over at Westside, which I think everybody should do, I definitely encourage everybody to be well read on that stuff. You'll see across the literature recommendations of anywhere from like 50 to 85% of 1 RM to be used for dynamic effort sets. That's a very, very broad range, and there's a lot of difference between 50% of 1 RM and 85%. And if you read the articles, you watch a lot of the videos, you're going to see recommendations within that spectrum. And I think if you don't understand the context, then it can be really, really confusing. So one of the first things to understand is a lot of that stuff is based off of a geared max. Okay, if you're basing your working weights in the gym and you're not training with competition gear, if you're basing that off of a geared competition lift, meaning squat suits, knee wraps, power briefs, that kind of thing, your percentage is going to be a lot lower. Okay, you're going to be operating way closer to that 50% range than you would be in the 85 or 80% range. The other thing is the use of accommodating resistance, the bands and chains, okay, that everybody associates with Westside. That is going to influence the amount of bar weight that you're going to have on there. If you're adding a lot of band tension or a lot of heavy chains, you're going to have to bring down the amount of weight on the bar in order to maintain your speed. Okay. Now, I don't work with geared powerlifters. I work with athletes, competitive in different sports, and I work with some raw powerlifters and Olympic weightlifters. So I don't use a whole lot of accommodating resistance. I think a little bit of light band tension is a good thing for dynamic effort training, but I don't get into super heavy band training. I just don't think it's that applicable in my experience. So where does that leave us as far as a percentage? How much weight should you be putting on the bar for a dynamic effort workout? Well, one of the best explanations that I heard Louis give was that he thought, from his understanding of some of the Russian literature, that you would get your best gains from training in that 75 to 85% range. So a 3-week wave would be 1 week at 75%, 1 week at 80%, the third week at 85%, all done for like anywhere from 8 to 12 sets of doubles. Okay, what he has done is he maintains those percentages, but with a combination of straight weight and accommodating resistance. So he'll put on about 50 to 60% in bar weight, with about 25% of the weight coming from band tension or chain weight. So what do you get if you take 50% bar weight, 25% band tension? You get about 75% of 1RM. Okay, same thing. You take 60% bar weight, 25% band tension, add it together, you get 85%. So I don't know if that's making sense to everybody of where the discrepancy in those numbers come from. So if you want to make it easy on yourself, which you should, I would not try to do anything with bands and chains right off the bat if you've never had any experience with dynamic effort training. I would just start with straight weight. Now, when I do it with straight weight with people, I found 75 to 85% is a little bit heavy, especially that 85% week. It gets pretty hard to move 85% really explosively for doubles in those later sets, okay, especially if you're trying to utilize short rest. So I would lower those percentages down to between 70 and 80%, okay, and then from there you just have to monitor your speed. If you're really slow with 70 to 80%, move it down a little bit and try 65 to 75%, or even 60 to 70%. I really don't think you need to go less than about 60% of straight bar weight. I think at that point, if you can't move 60% fast, something's wrong. Either your estimates are wrong, or I don't know, something's messed up. But usually 60% is even a little bit light for squats, and it flies off the back a little bit too much. And we don't want it to be, super light. We want the weight to push back on us a little bit. We just want it light enough where we can really accelerate the load from the beginning to the end of the rep, but we don't want it too light. We do want some resistance on there. So again, kind of play around with it, but I hope that's offered a little bit of clarity to people on the difference between dynamic training, dynamic effort training, and then kind of some of the confusion that exists just around dynamic effort training. So if not, I hope I didn't just add to the confusion for a bunch of people. Hit me up on my blog at bakerstrengthcoaching.com, or shoot me an email or something, or hit me up on my programming forum on startingstrength.com. It's probably better, and we can discuss it there, and maybe I can offer you some tips to incorporate it into your own training, because I do think it is an effective method to use. And if you've bought Practical Programming 3rd edition, which myself and Rip just kind of rewrote all the programs in there, there's a ton of examples that use dynamic effort training in there. We both agree that it's a really good way for lifters to accumulate volume. So if you want to see how dynamic effort training fits into some of those models, like the Texas method or split routine models, things like that, then go definitely pick up the book, and you can figure it out for yourself. So, all right, thanks.